here in New York City, President Trump taking a hard line on illegal immigration as the White House pushes Congress to get moving. The president's team getting ready for a new package of immigration proposals, calling on lawmakers to close loopholes in U.S. law. So welcome back, everybody. Second hour starts right now. Sandra's got some time off.
Yes, she
well
does.
deserved. I'm Bill Hemmer, live in America's News.
And
Thanks for coming back for day two.
Again, yeah, decided to take a little more of it.
Good for you.
Well, the immigration debate is heating up as President Trump calls for an overhaul of, quote, ridiculous immigration laws. The president tweeting this: the big caravan of people from Honduras now coming across Mexico and heading to our weak laws border had better be stopped before it gets there. Cash cow NAFTA is in play, as is foreign aid to Honduras and the countries that allow this to happen. Congress must act now. Well, former Trump campaign manager Corey Lewandowski is on tap, but first, let's get to Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel. He's live for us in Washington. Hi, Mike.
Heather, good morning to you. President Trump initially tried working with Democrats to come up with a DACA deal that would have a serious security component, including his border wall proposal. Now he's blasting the other party.
The Democrats have really let them down. They've really let them down. They had this great opportunity. The Democrats have really let them down. It's a shame. And now people are taking advantage of DACA, and that's a shame. It should have never happened.
Democrats are firing back. For example, Connecticut Senator Richard Blumenthal on Twitter writing, "I will continue to work with colleagues in Congress to reach a bipartisan DACA compromise with or without the president's leadership." Today, a House Democrat from New York said the president's tough talk is all a distraction.
Every time Mueller puts up the heat on him, he pivots to immigration. When he has another stormy day with Stormy Daniels, he pivots to immigration. So this is a way of scapegoating a good part of the country, 800,000 dreamers.
There is a sense some of the pressure came off top leaders in Congress, with the court stepping in to provide work and deportation protections for the so-called dreamers for now. A Senate conservative says efforts to come up with immigration solutions were frustrating.
I actually had amendments to the bill that would have actually increased legal immigration to take pressure off of illegal immigration. None of my amendments were heard. No, had any votes. They had 4 pre-planned votes where they already knew the outcome and they knew all 4 would lose. And this is a sad thing about the Senate and Congress in general.
Unless there's some quick wheeling and dealing when Congress returns, there is a sense immigration will likely be a central 2018 campaign issue. Heather?
Which may have been what Democrats intended. Mike Emanuel, live for us. Thank you.
We got a lot on our plate right now. Corey Lewandowski, former chief strategist for Strategist for America First Action, author of the New York Times bestseller, Let Trump Be Trump. Corey, how you doing? And good morning to you, and good to have you back on our program today. Moments ago, here's the tweet on Amazon. It's fresh. This is what it says. I'm right about Amazon costing the United States Post Office massive amounts of money for being their delivery boy. Amazon should pay these costs plus and not have them borne by the American taxpayer. Many billions of dollars. Post Office leaders, PO leaders don't have a clue. Or do they, he asked. Corey, Wall Street Journal responds to all this, okay, in a rather direct way. Here's what they say from yesterday. Mr. Trump risks undermining the policy gains, they write, from tax reform and deregulation that have teed up the economy for faster growth. That's the anxiety investors are showing as they sell stocks. Is anyone in the White House paying attention? You were with the president the other night having dinner. Go ahead and frame it. What would you say to that answer?
Well, what the president said very clearly is we've had a U.S. postal system that has lost billions of dollars over the years, and the American taxpayers have underwritten it because it's an important component of, of our American fabric. But if Amazon is going to use it as their delivery method, then maybe we need to charge them a little bit more so that the American taxpayers aren't ultimately subsidizing the deliveries of Amazon. This is how a businessman thinks. He thinks of running the federal government like a business. We're $21 trillion in debt. Why do the taxpayers have to continuously subsidize the U.S. Postal Service if it continues to lose money and they're making the deliveries from Amazon? So let's raise the rate on Amazon.
I think you're making entirely valid points in everything you're saying. However, you had momentum and it just seems like you're stepping on it. What do you think of that?
No, I don't think that's true at all. Look, we saw We saw just last week the stock market was up the third highest it's ever been in a single day. Yesterday, it went back a little bit, but here's where we are. Look, it's going to take a little time. We have a growth rate in the first quarter of 2.9%, which is significantly better than where the Obama administration was. He was a consistent 1.4, 1.5, 1.6% growth rate, right? We're at 2.9%. That could be revised upward of over 3%. The economy is moving in the right direction, and businesses, because of the historic tax cuts,
let's
are actually making investments.
On DACA, there was an idea floated over the weekend, I believe, that said, I know the president's got his 4 pillars in immigration. Well, what if they gave him the $25 billion for the complete construction of the wall in exchange for the Dreamers? Is that something he'd entertain?
Look, I think he would entertain it, but right now we have a crisis heading towards our borders, which is really unparalleled in our nation's history. We've got hundreds, if not thousands, of people marching through Mexico and threatening to come into our country illegally. And I would ask and encourage the president to put all of the resources necessary that we have at our disposal, which means federal law enforcement agencies, if it is required to activate National Guard troops to prevent people from coming. We are a sovereign country. If we can't control our borders, then we have nothing. And I think this president, before we get that wall built, has to make sure that these individuals who are threatening to come into our country illegally are stopped by all means necessary.
We're going to take our viewers down a text in about 20 minutes on more on that in a moment here. What about the meeting you had with him the other day, Corey? What about the realignment of the West Wing? Give our viewers a sense of where he is at the moment on all that.
Well, I think what you see now is you see Larry Kudlow, who has now come into the building as of Monday. Yesterday, he was at the building. The president talked about it. We see that John Bolton is coming into the building. These are individuals who are both contemporaries of the president in age and people who have worked with the president in his previous iteration as a business executive and now as the leader of the free world. They understand the president. They are on his agenda, and I think what you will see is a president who's surrounding himself with individuals who fundamentally agree with his philosophy as it relates to world affairs, and that's very important because he tried it the other way. He tried it the way that they told him he had to do it because that's the way it's always been done, and it didn't work, so now he's bringing contemporaries in to help him be more successful.
Okay, quick lightning round here in the time I have left. Is Vladimir Putin coming to the White House? Is that going to happen?
I think the president's extended that offer, and I think that it would be a historic thing if it were to happen.
Okay, and what does the president want to get out of that meeting?
Well, I think what the president wants to get is the opportunity to work with Russia when it is in the mutual interest of, when it's in the best interest of the United States. And that means eradicating ISIS and ISIL in Syria and in other places. But look, this president just last week expelled 60 Russian individuals from the United States because of security concerns. So he has been tough on Russia and continues to be. But we need Russia's help if we're going to keep the economic pressure on North Korea and prevent Kim Jong-un from testing nuclear weapons.
Understood. On General Kelly, I know you're close with him and you speak to him quite often. Is he okay, or is he on the outside now?
No, General Kelly is staying firmly in the White House. It is a very difficult job. He has done a very good job in the capacity as chief of staff. And, you know, I would say that you will see General Kelly staying at least through the next midterm elections, if not beyond. He's very much in charge of what goes on from the staffing positions of that White House, and he's here to stay. Okay,
last point, Scott Pruitt, head of the EPA. You know the amount of regulations he's cut back all across the country. The left has him in his crosshairs, now. I understand the president spoke with him last night. General Kelly spoke with him earlier today. Do you have information as to whether or not Scott Pruitt leaves this administration?
From what I'm told, both General Kelly and President Trump have assured Scott Pruitt that he's staying on for right now, and that will continue. I believe that General Kelly has been waiting for an IG report to come out of the EPA, and so until that happens, I believe Administrator Pruitt is safe in his position.
Okay, sir, thank you for being on here today, okay? I hope you come back. Corey Lewandowski, the list is long, often. Thank you, Corey. We'll see you real soon. 8 minutes now past the hour.
And this Fox News alert, ISIS claiming responsibility for a deadly attack on a Christian family in Pakistan. 4 people killed in the Easter Monday shooting as the family was traveling in the southwestern region of the country. So Lucas Tomlinson is live for us from the Pentagon right now. Lucas, is this more evidence that ISIS is expanding its reach?
Heather, it's proof the ISIS brand remains strong despite significant battlefield losses in Iraq and Syria. According to local reports, the Christian family was traveling in a rickshaw when gunmen on motorcycles stopped them, killing 3 family members and the driver. A child survived. Roughly 2% of Pakistan's 200 million people are Christian. And days before Christmas, ISIS also claimed responsibility for a suicide attack in a Christian church. The attack Monday took place in the city of Quetta in Baluchistan, which borders Iran and Afghanistan, home to 3 terrorist groups, the Pakistan Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and the Islamic State. The Trump administration has accused Pakistan of not doing enough to stop terrorism. And earlier this year, the Pentagon withheld $900 million in counterterrorism funds to Pakistan over the issue. Heather.
So let's shift from Pakistan to Syria now. Has the Pentagon said any more about the U.S. Army soldier killed early Friday morning?
Heather, the Pentagon says it was a joint American and British special operations raid in the city of Manbij, not far from the border with Turkey, a city liberated from ISIS in 2016. Master Sergeant Jonathan Dunbar and his British teammate, Sergeant Matt Tunro, were killed in a bomb blast. Local residents reported gunfire before the explosion and suspect a suicide bomber was responsible. 5 other soldiers were wounded. The incident came roughly 2 hours after President Trump said the U.S. would be leaving Syria very soon. And the head of U.S. forces in the Middle East, General Joe Votel, is speaking right now in Washington about Syria and the way ahead in the ISIS fight. Heather?
All right. Well, let us know what he says. Lucas Tomlinson live for us. Thank you.
All right. 10 minutes past the hour now. Breaking news from a federal courthouse now. The first person expected to be sentenced in the Mueller matter after pleading guilty back in January. Details on what's happening inside coming up this hour.
Plus, the stunning new interview with Saudi Arabia's crown prince. Why he's slamming the Obama administration's Iran nuke deal, and he's saying that the supreme leader is, quote, worse than Hitler.
Oh, CNN reporter now facing a lot of criticism after bombarding the president with tough questions in front of children at the Easter egg roll. The president answered those questions. Howard Kurtz will analyze. He fires back next.
The Democrats have really let them down. They've really let them down.
Connecticut Democratic Congresswoman Elizabeth Esty announcing she will not seek re-election as she faces calls to resign. She's under fire because of her handling of a sexual harassment case involving her former chief of staff. She says that her decision is in the best interest of her constituents and her family in Connecticut.
Well, CNN's chief White House correspondent Jim Acosta facing some backlash for shouting questions about killing DACA at President Trump while he was coloring with his son and another group of very young children at the White House Easter egg roll yesterday. Take a listen to this.
The Democrats have really let them down. They've really let them down. They had this great opportunity. The Democrats have really let them down. It's a shame. And now people are taking advantage of DACA, and that's a shame.
So let's bring in Howie Kurtz, Fox News media analyst and host of Media Buzz. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
So it's an Easter egg roll, you know, in front of these kids. They're trying to, you know, color, and the Easter bunny was there, too.
Yeah, you know, I'm all for shouted questions, but Jim Acosta clearly crossed a line by doing it in this setting with a bunch of children surrounding the president. He did get an answer, which is why reporters do it. But it's no accident that Acosta did this on DACA, an issue in which he is clearly an advocate. Quick example, last year, White House briefing with Stephen Miller. Acosta, what the president is proposing does not sound like it's in keeping with American tradition when it comes to immigration. The Statue of Liberty says, give me your tired, your poor. You're bringing a press one for English philosophy to immigration. That's never been what the U.S. has been about. Now, does that sound like a journalist questions or an activist engaging in debate?
Yeah, so let's hear what Trump's 2020 campaign manager had to say, Brad Parscale. He chimed in on Twitter. Here's what he said. He said, I'm sorry, Parscale, I should say. He said this, maybe it's time for Jim Acosta to get a suspension for breaking protocol. He continues to embarrass himself and CNN, pull his credentials for each incident. So, of course, he responded, Jim Acosta, back on Twitter, and this is what he said: just doing my job, which is protected by the First Amendment of the Constitution. You might want to give it a read. So back and forth.
Yeah, sure, it's a question of how you do your job and in a setting in which you ask such a question. I think it was a bit of an overreaction for Brad Parscale to talk about pulling his credentials. That's actually not up to the White House. It's up to the White House Correspondents Association. But clearly, President Trump, no fan of CNN, tweeted today, I guess, against CNN President Jeff Zucker and said, you can't get a job at Ratings Challenge CNN unless you state that you're totally anti-Trump. Well, Jason Miller, former campaign aide who works for CNN, I'm sure would disagree with that. CNN punching back false. The personal political beliefs of CNN employees are of no interest to us. I think the question here is, CNN, I have to assume, must be happy with the job that Acosta is doing, because this sort of thing has come up again and again, and he doesn't seem to be reined in by the network at all.
Yeah, grandstanding. But you've covered the media for a while. I mean, isn't it interesting how things have changed? Because I remember a day and age when reporters weren't supposed to be the story themselves.
Yeah, well, that's changed on a lot of fronts in the age of Twitter and everyone going on cable news and all of that. But, when you're a White House correspondent, it seems to me you're different. Yes, you should be aggressive. And I was critical of correspondents who were rude and interrupted President Obama, so I'm consistent on this. But when you do it in that fashion, a bunch of children sitting around, and when you are debating the issues with the president or his aides, instead of asking questions, trying to elicit information, that's not really the role of the White House correspondent, and that's where I have some problems with the way Acosta does his job.
Yeah, on the other hand, though, President Trump is known to go off script frequently. I mean, he stood beside the Easter Bunny yesterday, and he talked about the amount of money going into the military, that type of thing.
Yeah, look, the fact is, if you rarely got a chance to ask a question to the president, then I suppose you could justify doing it in any setting. This president actually stops and takes questions a lot at White House photo ops, when he's going to the helicopter and all of that. So you can say a lot of things about President Trump, and he does punch back hard against the media, CNN particularly. He also goes after NBC and the New York Times and the, quote, Amazon Washington Post, which, of course, they're separate companies. But you can't say he doesn't take questions from the press.
No, absolutely. All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Howie. Have a good day.
Great. It's about 20 minutes past the hour now. The wife of the former FBI director, Andrew McCabe, firing back first time now, going public after her husband's termination. What she says about President Trump this morning, I'll tell you that.
And we knew that it was big, but the Roseanne reboot premiere, it just got even bigger. Yep, how the show just made ratings history ahead. Some big numbers to tell you about Roseanne breaking a ratings record with its premiere last week. New totals showing that nearly 7 million viewers tuned in to watch delayed viewings of the reboot in the 3 days following its season premiere. That brings its total to 25 million viewers, and those ratings expected to go even higher once Sunday night's encore telecast and streaming audiences are finally tallied up.
So pressure on episode coming up, right?
Yeah. I think even more people will watch because we've been talking about it.
We've talked about it a lot. That's right. We'll see how the next episode does. All right, 24 minutes past the hour now. Let's roll. It may seem like midterms are some time away, but candidates, they are hitting the ground. They're spending a lot of money. In West Virginia Democratic Senator Joe Manchin facing a tough re-election battle this November, even though 3 Republicans are battling in next month's primary to be his challenger. President Trump won the state by more than 40 points in 2016, but recent special elections have shown that may not guarantee anything. Peter Ducey, live in Charleston, West Virginia, with more. And what happened that really shook up this race there, Peter?
Bill, it got really shaken up, excuse me, when one of the most polarizing business figures in West Virginia got out of jail and into the race. His name is Don Blankenship, a former head of the Massey Energy Company, who served a year on a conviction for conspiracy to skirt safety laws that contributed to the deadly Upper Big Branch mine tragedy, where 29 miners lost their lives. But Blankenship thinks the charges were political, so it'll help rally Republicans around him.
I'm sort of as I said, the point man for West Virginia on conservative causes for the last 20 years, and most people know that I got assaulted by the President Obama because of that.
Operatives I've spoken to in D.C., though, working with Republicans, say that if Blankenship is the Republican on the ballot, it might endanger their chances to pick up the Manchin seat. Bill.
How are the other candidates trying to set themselves apart in a crowded race, Peter?
It's basically, Bill, a race within the Republican Party to see who can get the closest to President Trump. One of the people in this race, Congressman Evan Jenkins.
I'm the only candidate who actually has an established working relationship with the president. I'm the only candidate that actually has a 100% voting record pro-life, pro-Second Amendment.
The other candidate, Attorney General Patrick Morrisey, is working hard now to discredit his opponent's claims of long-standing family business ties to the opioid industry.
I think it'll be clear that the people that are making these attacks are just making these things up because they can't stand on their own record. I have a strong, positive, conservative record to run on, and unlike the other candidates, you don't have to lie in order to try to get ahead.
So now the challenge for these candidates in the Republican primary is to get midterm voters to do what the state's governor did last year after President Trump's election, which was switch from Democratic to Republican registration.
Very interesting as it heats up. Congratulations to your Villanova Wildcats. National champs. Well done, Peter.
Thank you, Bill.
Nice tie. See you later.
But the very first sentencing hearing is underway in Robert Mueller's investigation. A live report on a former lawyer's fate.
All right. Also, the Trump team moving to speed deportations as the White House steps up its battle against illegal immigration. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton live on that with his take plus reaction to what Mexico is saying.
What we're trying to do precisely is to work with the United States and Central Americans, first, again, to address the cause of immigration. Because if we don't do that, it's very difficult. And second, to achieve migration policies that are allow us to better manage the phenomenon.
Trust is becoming the most important factor in news.
Our responsibility is to ask the questions that are difficult and to demand answers of those people who are in power.
With the experience I've had in working at the White House, I think I'm better able to understand what's going on behind the scenes.
I'm part of that machinery at Fox News that works so hard to make sure that you not just know it first, but that you know it correctly.
So 10:30, Justice Department now moving to clear out the enormous backlog of immigration court matters. A new mandate imposing quotas for judges to increase productivity and speed up deportations. Joining me now, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. How are you, sir? And welcome back here on America's Newsroom. Here is the objective: 678 a year to 700. That tells the judges do 3 more per day. How do you think that benefits the system if that happens?
Look, we've got a huge backlog. The system as it is not working. Offering up a new idea, let's try it. Let's see if it works. I don't see a problem with trying this.
Can it be done? 3 a day doesn't seem like a lot, but perhaps it is. I don't know.
It doesn't seem like it's a major change. You're talking about 678 cases now on average, up to 700 over a course of a year. If you do that with several hundred judges, you know, you potentially get rid of your backlog. I like it.
Okay. There was a tweet on this Mexican caravan a bit earlier today. Guys, we'll skip ahead one to the Trump on the caravan matter that came out this morning. This is what he says. The big caravan of people from Honduras now coming across Mexico and heading to our weak laws border had better be stopped before it gets there. Cash cow NAFTA is in play, as is foreign aid to Honduras and the countries that allow this to happen. Congress must act now. I don't know what Congress can do, but in the meantime, tell us about the caravan, because it's not the first time it's happened. Tell us about the group behind it, sir. What should we understand?
So obviously it's a group that is pushing open borders where we have absolutely no borders. Texas has dealt with this issue because we are the border state that had to deal with this. When Obama basically invited people and children to come to our country, I do like that Trump is speaking out on this, and I hope that these other countries like Mexico will listen and stop it before it gets to the Texas border.
Okay, the thing that's significant about this caravan, it's the largest we have seen, right? I mean, it's in the 10 years that has been happening with this particular group, it's the largest that's happened in a decade. I am told the White House is putting great pressure on Mexico to intervene here. What do you have on that?
I've heard the same thing, and I hope it's absolutely true. Obviously, when this happened before, even with less people, it created havoc on our border. We had to deal with all these people, and it was difficult given the number of people that came up. It'll be the same this time.
Okay, here is the Mexican ambassador on with Brett last night and their position on this matter.
It is in our own interest to have a secure border in our southern border, and we're also in favor of having a secure border with the United States. But actually, Brett, if we do have legal avenues for people to migrate, we do a better job, and we can devote more resources to the actual security threats.
Well, what do you think of that? And what is the degree of cooperation, not just with Washington, but maybe with Austin, there in Texas with Mexican authorities?
Look, at least they're now talking about border security. It sounds like they're more willing to help. I just hope that it results in actions that stop this caravan from coming up and that result in progress in the future so that we don't have these problems.
Okay, I'm reading that the group will soon be dispersed in Mexico, and the Mexican government would manage them for a period of about 10 days, and some of them may likely go back to Honduras. Does that match what you're hearing there?
That's exactly what I'm hearing. I just hope it actually turns out to be a reality, because obviously for Texas, this is a legitimately tough issue.
Okay, what if it doesn't happen that way?
Well, I think we're going to have chaos on our border, just like we did last time, and then we have to deal with the problem on our border and figuring out how to get these people back and what to do with children that are part of this caravan.
Okay, if they reach the border, do they get asylum effectively? Because then they go into our legal system, and who knows where they go after that?
That is the frustrating part. Apparently, American attorneys are meeting with these people somewhere in Mexico to give them advice on how to get asylum. So they're being trained and coached on what to say, and ultimately that slows our process down and potentially leaves us in a very difficult situation.
When you say they are coached on what to say, what does that mean?
I think they're told what to say on how do you get asylum, what do you need to say, you're suffering some type of persecution, whether it's true or not. They're being coached. I've been told they're being coached in Mexico on what to say.
So I'm assuming that's common then?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is common. I think that's happened in the past, and I think it's going to happen this time. And ultimately, these people aren't telling us necessarily what they think. They're being coached on what to say.
Understood. Final question here. In the grand scheme of this issue, do you think this administration has been effective in the action or the voice that it's given to the immigration debate?
I think they've been the most effective administration that I've ever seen. We have been frustrated with this issue for years in Texas. We've spent our own resources. We have to deal with the crime issues. And this is the first time we've actually had a decrease in immigration, at least to the levels that we're seeing under the Trump administration. So I'm grateful. I mean, maybe everything doesn't work exactly like we'd hope, but at least they're trying, and I think we're making progress.
Well, sir, thank you for coming on today. Appreciate your viewpoint.
Absolutely.
Okay? Ken Paxton.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
You bet. Thank you. Heather.
Well, happening right now, the first sentencing hearing in the Mueller probe. Dutch lawyer Alex van der Zwaan appearing in federal court in Washington within the last hour. Now, in late February, he pleaded guilty to lying to federal investigators about his contact with a Trump campaign aide. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge is live for us in Washington with the breaking developments. Hi, Catherine.
Well, thank you, Heather, and good morning. Alex van der Zwaan arrived at the D.C. federal courthouse just a couple of blocks from where I am right now about 15 minutes ago. He's gone into the sentencing hearing, and we have our producer, Jake Gibson, on the scene, who will be bringing us updates. As you mentioned, van der Zwaan admitted lying to federal investigators as part of the special counsel Russia probe led by Robert Mueller and his contacts with Paul Manafort, as well as, we believe, another associate of Manafort, Rick Gates. One of the senior prosecutors in this case, Andrew Weissman, has asked the federal judge not to reveal all of the information about this line of investigation because he says it's very sensitive, and only van der Zwaan and the special counsel team have really any visibility into the facts at play. Now, for lying to federal investigators, that's typically a sentence of 5 years for every event. But we understand, based on the developments in the case, that van der Zwaan will be given a much lesser sentence because of the degree to which he is cooperating with the special counsel, Heather.
So also happening this morning, Andrew McCabe's wife, Jill, has this op-ed in the Washington Post. What is she saying?
Well, Jill McCabe is writing in the Washington Post, and she says she's now free to speak now that her husband has been terminated. So she's going on the record, and she's calling the last year a nightmare for their family. Dr. McCabe, who unsuccessfully ran for a Virginia Senate seat in 2015, said her husband did not campaign with her, despite a widely circulated photo of her husband wearing a campaign T-shirt. You see it there. She said the photo was only meant for family and friends. She also said the FBI ethics panel reviewed the campaign contributions she received in excess of $500,000 from a longtime Clinton ally, Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, and his PAC. The FBI concluded at that time that there was no conflict. Quote, I have spent countless hours trying to understand how the president and so many others can share such destructive lies about me, she wrote. I want people to know that the whole story that everything is based on is just false and utterly absurd. Now that I can speak on my own behalf, I want people to know that the whole story is just that, false and utterly absurd. Those who are critics of the Bureau, and especially Andrew McCabe, say the Bureau's conclusion that there was no appearance of a conflict suggests that there really is a culture problem, or was a culture problem, at the most senior FBI executive level. Heather.
All right, Catherine, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Getting news now. Scott Pruitt, the EPA administrator, now expected to make an announcement rolling back Obama-era fuel standards. This event happening in Washington, D.C. This while he is under fire from some for a housing arrangement he had during the transition period. Scott Pruitt has been a significant contributor to the cabinet in terms of rolling back regulations all across the country. And he's got a target on him right now from the left. But this event today to roll back some of the Obama-era standards when it comes to the automobile industry. So that's happening right now. Just wanted to share that with you in Washington, D.C. Meanwhile, Saudi's crown prince with some stunning comments on Israel and Iran, how he's bucking the trend of most Arab rulers and what it shows about President Trump's progress in the Middle East. That's coming up.
Plus, caught on camera, a train slamming into a tractor trailer, what police say took place before the moment of impact. We'll tell you what happened and what happened to that truck driver.
Well, this is some video right here capturing the moment a freight train slams into a semi-truck. Take a look. There it is. A witness recorded that in Georgia yesterday. Luckily, the truck driver got out before impact. Police citing him for failure to obey a traffic control device, among a few other charges. But they're okay, but doesn't look great.
That's amazing.
That's
spectacular crash. Well, a bold statement from the Saudi crown prince, Mohammed bin Salman, slamming President Obama's Iran nuke deal and asserting Israel's right to exist. It's a sharp 180-degree turn from other Arab and Muslim leaders. In a wide-ranging interview with The Atlantic, the Saudi royal says that the supreme leader of Iran, quote, makes Hitler look good. He believes that he owns the world. They are both evil guys. He's the Hitler of the Middle East. In the 1920s and 1930s, no one saw Hitler as a danger, only a few people, until it happened. So let's bring in Fox News national security and foreign affairs analyst Waleed Phares. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So does it surprise you that he's taking aim at Iran's supreme leader?
It does not, Heather. What the American public now is seeing is the tip of the iceberg. This change, this cultural, political change, this reform that has been hitting the Saudi leadership, but also other countries in the Middle East. I would mention Egypt, I mentioned the UAE, Bahrain, Jordan, Tunisia. There is a whole movement which started actually under the Obama administration, and actually because of the criticism they had against Washington then. But now under the Trump administration, they're taking advantage that they can meet with the new administration and talk about these issues.
Yeah, and speaking of the Obama administration, he was also asked about the Iran deal, and he sided with the current administration on that.
He did side not to please the administration. This is not a political move, because the Saudi leadership, MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, and also the other leaders in the region believe that the Iran deal is providing Iran with weapons and money, and evidence on the ground shows that Iran is expanding in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and is not showing signs that it is retreating and going back in the peaceful direction.
Right. He made a very good point. He said, you know, they got, what, $150 billion after the deal. Do you see anything being done in the communities to make anything better? No.
Well, look, when the Iranian regime, the same Iranian regime that was expanding, receives billions and billions of dollars, you're going to see, like the Emir has done, look at what they are spending on. They're not